For more on this, we're joined by Vicky Pryce. She's Chief Economic Advisor at the Centre for Economics and Business Research. Good to have you back on the programme, Vicky. Now, with a massive 40% hike in defence spending proposed for the next year, is the US economy currently being restructured into a permanent war economy to sustain the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz?
There is no doubt that the increase which is asked for the defence budget for next year is pretty substantial. But of course, a lot depends on what happens in this war and how long it lasts. And you did mention the cost, of course, that is already inflicted on the US in terms of all the planes and also drones and munitions that it's using at present, which need to be replenished somehow. And I think that's what this extra 200 billion request is about. So that's nothing to do with the actual budget for 2027. So it just shows that this has been a very costly exercise. And the US, of course, can handle it. But just remember that the US already has a 39 trillion debt, which is very high. And one of the problems is that looking ahead, because of very high interest rates that are still there, yields on 10-year Treasury bonds are high, actually paying the interest on that debt is becoming increasingly expensive. So that debt is likely, therefore, to continue increasing, and the government is having a big deficit every year anyway. So we are talking about certainly in terms of approving this extra 200 billion, which is being asked for right now, there is indeed a request to understand a little bit better what the costs, the daily costs, are going to be, for how long, and what exactly the money is going to be going towards. That is the real question. We all want to know, how long we're going to be seeing this particular ceasefire extend to. President Trump says it's indefinite, but of course, whatever happens over the next few weeks will perhaps also determine what the overall costs are going to be for the war that we've seen so far, and what else may be required simply to replenish the equipment that has already been lost.
Yes, and with a $1 billion daily burn rate, how long can the US economy sustain this before it triggers a domestic political crisis over spending?
Well, it can sustain it for quite some time, assuming, of course, the funds are coming. I mean, we are talking about a country which is spending sort of trillions every year, sort of in terms of overall costs to the government, and collects a little bit less. So it spends about 10 trillion, it collects about 7.5 or 8. So we're talking about deficits of between $1.5 and $2 trillion a year anyway. So it will, of course, add to the whole costs, but there is no doubt that, I think, as you started asking at the beginning, we are talking about a US which is now militarizing a lot more. Yes, of course, President Trump came to power saying that he wasn't actually going to be involved in wars, but actually, and of course, at the very beginning, we had seen plans to reduce defense spending year after year after year over the next 4 years of the presidency. And that, of course, has now been thrown out of the window. And we're not talking just about needing to spend on defense for the issues that we have to deal with now in the Gulf, but also there is funding which is required for the Golden Dome. Remember, this is the space-based weapons system, which is meant to be happening to intercept strikes against the US. So that's also going to require quite a lot of extra spending. Can the economy withstand it? Up to a point, yes. What, of course, President Trump has done, certainly for next year, is he's saying we're going to cut other types of spending by 10%. Well, this is an economy which is already suffering quite significantly because of the tariffs and because, of course, of the increase in the cost because of the war and pump prices, petrol prices, gasoline rather, in the US going up. And there is some indication that certainly the consumer is beginning to feel some of the heat of all this. So there is a limit to how much of those cuts can actually take effect in the US economy, public sector cuts that Trump intends to do. So the war is costing, there is no doubt about it, in terms of prices and in terms of the debt in the US, and the capital markets will be looking at that carefully.
Right, we'll leave it there for now. Vicky Pryce in London, thank you very much as always.